We'll wait. 1 second. We'll be with you momentarily. I didn't hear this thing ring or anything. Did you?
No, when there were music around.
Hello, anybody there? Julia?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Say again.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Excellent.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Bonus. Not that you want to, but...
Oh, I do.
The sincerity is
Here, where's the mute button? Okay, I'd like to call to order the Spark City Council meeting of July 13th, 2015, with a roll call, please.
Mayor Martini,
Here.
City Council members Ratty,
Here.
Lawson,
here.
Smith,
Here.
Bybee,
Here.
Schmidt,
Here.
City Manager Driscoll,
Here.
City Attorney Adams.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, if you'd all stand, please, for the invocation speaker, Rajan Zed, the President of the Universal Society of Hinduism. Welcome, Rajan.
I will read from ancient Hindu scriptures, read in Sanskrit and translate into English. Om Bhurvubah Swah Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. We meditate on the transcendental glory of the Deity Supreme, who is inside the heart of the earth, inside the life of the sky, and inside the soul of the heaven. May He stimulate and illuminate our minds. Asto ma sadgamya, tamso ma jyotirgamya, mrityor mamratam gamya. Lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to immortality. Tasmada sakta statam karyam karma samachara, saktohya charan karma, parma panoti purusha, karma nevahi samsiddhi, mastita jankadya, loka sangreha mevapi, sampa shankar tumrahasi. Strive constantly to serve the welfare of the world. By devotion to selfless, one attains the supreme goal of life. Do your work with the welfare of others always in mind. Om Saha Navabtu Saha No Bunaktu Saha Viryan Karva Bahai Tejasvi Navadita Mastu Ma Vidvisa Bahai. May we be protected together, may we be nourished together, may we work together with great vigor, may our study be enlightening, may no obstacle arise between us. Samniva Akuti Samna Hridyaniva Samnamastu Vo Mano Yathava Susa Hasti. United your resolve, united your hearts, may your spirits be at one, that you may long together dwell in unity and concord. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om. Thank you.
Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Bybee, would you lead us, please?
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next I have comments from the public. Anyone in the public like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Anybody want to take anything out of order? If not, looking for a motion?
It's not working.
Is it not working? Mr. Schmidt,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I take a motion to approve the agenda as outlined.
do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Smith to approve the agenda as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Okay, please vote.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you. Approval of the minutes, consideration and possible approval of the minutes of the regular Sparks City Council meeting of June 22nd, 2015. Still working. Ms. Bybee?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Mr. Smith?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Bybee, seconded by Mr. Smith to approve the minutes of June 22nd, 2015. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Announcements, presentation, summary of the 78th session of the Nevada Legislature. Mr. Mayberry. Mr. Henseth, come on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Manager Driscoll, Mr. Adams. I'm Adam Mayberry with your Government and Community Relations Office. To my left is Rocky Finseth. Rocky is our hired contract lobbyist, as you know, with Carrera, Nevada. I also want to point out you have a couple of his team members in the audience as well. Jenny Reese and Heather Lunsford are with us as well. This is really, appreciate the opportunity. This is really just an opportunity to put a bit of a period at the end of the session, if you will. You know, there was a lot of discussion about this historic session. As you know, this was the session that the Republicans had the majority in both the House, the Senate, and all 6 constitutional offices. There was early discussion about significant reforms to collective bargaining, to PERS, to prevailing wage. Any reforms that did occur were fairly tepid, and we'll address those fairly briefly. So the items that we have, just want to present to you a very high-level overview, summarize some of the key pieces of legislation. Certainly don't represent everything that we tracked or that we worked, but certainly some of the high points. There was well over 1,000 pieces of legislation dropped and introduced, and we reviewed at least 2/3 of those and really focused in on those items that were significant and specific to the city of Sparks. As you know, you've all read enough commentary and reports, so I won't go into the nuances of the revenue reforms, or the education reforms rather, and the tax packages that ultimately passed the legislature. You know, some would say this was a session of guns and campus carry. But again, from the city's perspective, our team zeroes in on really what's most important to the city of Sparks. So we're going to present just an overview on some key items. We'll start with AB 19. And by the way, Wes Henderson, the Executive Director of the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities, is with us. He'll follow us and will provide a short overview from the league perspective. We won't duplicate each other's efforts. AB 19, though, was one of the 5 league bills. I affectionately refer to this bill as the Jeff Kronk Budget Act of 2015, because what this bill does is it now prevents us from having to have that public hearing on the 3rd Tuesday in May, as you recall. So we have some flexibility, and we can now approve the tentative budget during a regular city council meeting, and of course hold the budget hearing at that time as well. Taking the Assembly bills first, Assembly Bill 162, and I'm going to take Senate Bill 111 with that, because they were both bills that address body cameras for police officers. AB 162 is really permissive language, while SB 111 originally mandated that nearly every law enforcement agency and officer is required to be equipped with a police camera. For us, that would have had an impact of about $300,000. It's probably on the conservative side. The final version, however, only required that the Nevada Highway Patrol officers to be equipped with body cameras. So no impact from the city's perspective, but certainly expect those discussions to continue in the next legislative session. AB 172 increases the requirements for the payment of prevailing wage on public work projects from $100,000 to $250,000. AB 332 is a bill that will require public agencies, such as the City of Sparks, to pay sales taxes on construction materials used in construction projects. So during the testimony, one example that was cited to illustrate the problem that this bill was aimed to help resolve was a Nevada System of Higher Education project. In this case, the agency built a building on the campus of UNR and purchased all the equipment material, thereby avoiding the sales tax component. AB 493 is a historical bill, I think, that gives functional home rule for Nevada cities. I'll let Wes Henderson address this a little bit more in detail, but through the efforts of Rocky and your team with the city, I'm very proud that this bill was passed. It was one of 3 attempts to pass functional home rule for cities. In fact, Mayor Martini testified in support of an earlier bill. Senate Bill 118 is the Sparks Charter Bill. This bill was sponsored by Debbie Smith. It brought some clarity to the separation of powers for the municipal court. And this was our primary initiative that we brought into the building. As you know, the bill cleared both houses unanimously with no opposition. It was signed by the governor in early May in nearly record time. And again, that's the value that our contract lobbyist and his team are able to bring to us. Senate Bill 153 provides some heart and lung reforms for local governments. The new law eliminates compensation for diseases other than medical benefits and limits the presumption period. The bill also clarifies that if you use tobacco products or fail to follow a physician's prescribed plan of care, that you can no longer claim the benefit. All the bills that I'm illustrating, by the way, have been signed by the governor. That's one reason why we're coming. Go ahead.
Got a question, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A heart and lung reform, did they lessen the amount of years, or what did they do?
Mr. Manager, you want to address that?
Thank you. Mr. Smith, the primary thing that they did for the period of time was there is now a formula for actual years of service. So let's say that you actually worked for 15 years in a public safety job, you qualified for heart and lung. If you had no events for 15 years after you retire, then when you pass the same period of time that you were employed as a retiree, then the presumption that is currently in the law goes away. And so it's determined that you'll have physical when you retire, and if you've had 15 years without any incidences, then the presumption, now you have to go back and would have to fight for the presumption, would automatically go.
Okay.
There's a couple of exemptions if you otherwise qualified for the presumption and you were to have not followed some doctor's orders on your health, so things like obesity, and then obviously tobacco use was very specifically identified that if you use tobacco within a certain period of time prior to there being an incident, that could vacate, possibly vacate the heart and lung presumption from you and go from there. With all these cases, with the presumption going away, clearly if someone were to be ill, especially if they're still in the city's medical system, there would be a medical way to solve their problems, but it wouldn't be presumed under the current heart and lung.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We knew that would be good news, and I anticipate that question. And the manager's been really knee-deep involved with that bill, so thank you. There were some efforts to reform the collective bargaining process, as you know. AB 182 was Mr. Randy Kerner, Assemblyman Kerner's bill that was fairly wide-ranging for collective bargaining. That bill did receive a hearing. We did testify in support, limited support, because there were some provisions of that bill that we certainly support based on our legislative platform. However, that bill didn't go any further than a hearing in its original committee. But there were other collective bargaining reform bills that did have some elements of that bill. Senate Bill 168, for instance, does increases the ending fund balance that is exempt from negotiations. Our approved state legislative platform supports advocating of an ending fund balance that is protected at 16.6%. That's 2 months. This new law exceeds that to 25% or 3 months. So again, another positive development for the city from that perspective. SB 185 is a bill that you've heard a lot about. This is the bill that requires automatic aid agreements between Washoe County fire agencies does essentially two things. Number one, it requires that a firefighting vehicle located closest to a structure or brush fire to respond, and then it mandates a negotiation of an auto aid agreement to address the reimbursement of cost, geographic areas to be covered, and other items that are applicable to the parties. The bill's sponsor, Senator Ben Kekeffer, did acknowledge during testimony that Sparks already has the appropriate auto aid agreements in place, and is complimentary toward the city on that effort. Senate Bill 241.
Go ahead.
Probably.
Ms. Lawson.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to back up on that.
Sure, please.
Just with the advent of Washoe County suing Reno, I just want to be very clear. Sparks already does automatic aid with both the county and the city of Reno, and we have no issues there. So
That's correct.
I just want that on the record for our citizens, that we've played ball with everybody all along.
Mr. Driscoll.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make one small modification to Mr. Lawson's current statement. We currently have an automatic aid agreement with Truckee Meadows because they had requested one. We've had that for a long time. Reno has not requested an automatic aid agreement with us. We do have mutual aid, which we respond to on a regular basis, but we certainly have let Reno know, and we've let them know for years, that if they ever asked for us to sit down and discuss automatic aid, we are willing and able to do that right away. But the only actual automatic aid agreement we have right now is with Truckee because they requested one years ago. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Senate Bill 241 is probably the most significant collective bargaining reform bill of the session. Mostly applies to schools and school district administrators. For example, you can no longer collective bargain if you're a school administrator, make over $120,000 a year. But specific to local governments, it does specify.
Which one are you talking about, Adam?
Senate Bill 241.
Yeah, but it's not the same as the text you got up there.
That's true. That's true. That's just, I'm going to jump into this text right now, but I did want to give a little background that it does primarily address school districts and school district administrators, but there's some provisions in the bill that do address local governments.
Okay.
And so specific to local governments, it specifies that employees cannot be paid for tax dollars for conducting union business unless there's a trade-off in the bargaining contract. And as the slide states, eliminates evergreen clauses, meaning that once a contract expires, no salary or benefit enhancements are allowed until the new contract goes into effect. Okay. Senate Bill 276. This reallocates the 11 remaining dispensaries, medical marijuana dispensaries licenses that most rural counties declined. So 8 of those went to Clark County. 3 of those were allocated to Washoe, with 1 each going to Sparks, Reno, Washoe County. We spent some time on this bill making sure that Sparks did in fact receive its fair share. Senate Bill 406 is really the only real PERS reform bill. This was sponsored by Senate Majority Leader Roberson. The bill only applies to future employees, has no impact on current employees. The law could provide some long-term savings for the PERS system for the city. That could mean mitigating future contribution rates. Some of the provisions that add to savings include slightly increasing the retirement age and years of service requirements for new employees, reduces the buying of service credits to retire early, and slightly changes the benefit multiplier and requires judges to pay 50% of required contributions to the plan. Again, this only impacts future employees, and the bill did become effective July 1 of this year.
Question,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Adam, and you said this only affects future employees, and we could have a $1 billion savings. It sounds like a lot of money, but in terms of the overall system, what does that mean? You know,
Well,
no, I guess, you know, we're about 75% funded in a PERS system right now, unless there's new numbers on out there that have changed that. What does this change the overall system, I mean, percentage that the system is funded right now? Is it still going to be underfunded when this is all done?
presumably, I can't speak intelligently on the ultimate impact, but you're right, there are some estimated savings of $1 billion based on new employees coming to the system, For instance, now you can, just an example, you could retire with 30 years at any age. This changes some of the formulas there. You have to be, you can have 30 years, but you can't retire until you're 55, and that age limit goes up, and so there are
It'll
other
still be underfunded.
so very, I think, tepid adjustments. Are we going to be underfunded? I don't know.
And that's my concern, is that whether the legislators have a full understanding of what this means. And I believe, Jeff will probably correct me if I'm wrong, but GASB 68 or 64, is it 68? Comes down that the underfunding now, and I'm not sure the start date of when it's going to start, actually becomes the city's responsibility. If there's any government agency on out there that's involved in the PERS, whatever the underfunding is, becomes on the balance sheet of the city. Am I correct? Tell me if I'm missing something here, and why that looks like that's just a transfer of numbers. That's a sign of future liabilities. And if you have a, let's just say it's 75% funded, 25% unfunded, if you look at the city's responsibility of a 25% PERS system of all the employees we have, that's huge. That's a lot of dollars. And all of a sudden, this system collapses. There's only one place they go for it. The state has no money for that. They got to take care of their own employees. They're going to come out. It's, this is really you don't even get to ring the bell on the train or operate or anything else like that, but it's going down a track that's not good, and going to have a big collision here happening, and we get to pay the price for it. We can't even say what's going on here. And I think it's for next year, the city council on one of our charter bills should be addressing this issue, because why it's only going to look like a number transfer, it's huge dollars. I don't know if we have any kind of idea what that is today, what that's going to look like on our balance sheets. It becomes the city's liability, is what it's going to come down to. They may say it's not to right now, but once it's on your balance sheet, it's a liability. And Jeff's over there shaking his head yes, so I must have got the story completely straight on how that money is going to work.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Senate Bill 411, this creates a 15-person committee that will identify language for a ballot question for a proposed tax increase to pay for school improvements in new schools here in Washoe County. Appointments to this committee include appointments from the Builders Association, retailers, labor groups, realtors, and the public sector, to include both mayors and the county commission. As you know, the mayor has appointed former city manager Sean Carey to serve on this committee. The question would not be an advisory question. It would be a binding question. So tax increases to be considered would include, say, the room tax increase, for instance, supplemental government services tax, tax on transfer of real property, or property tax, or sales tax. So that's SB 411. And then just a couple of quick items on the RSCBA. As Councilman Lawson knows, SB 312 did pass that increase to room taxes to pay for regional marketing and facilities. Our approved state platform does call for supporting legislation that does provide additional revenue for marketing purposes. Also, SB 40 did pass as well. That reduces the RSCBA board from 13 to 9. So with that, again, just a snapshot of some key legislation that we knew that you'd be interested in. Certainly a lot more. Happy to talk further. I do want to spend just a little time on this slide, because we do this once every 2 years, and it truly is a team effort. So I want to thank the mayor and the council for all of your support. It's truly an honor to represent the citizens of Sparks during this process. The legislative team and Carrera, particularly Mayor Martini, Councilwoman Ratty, and the Manager Driscoll, we met weekly, talked about legislation that was introduced, talked about finding consensuses on what positions to take, to advocate, to oppose. The model that we have in place works really well. I want to thank all of our department heads and senior managers, those that are primarily off my left shoulder. They looked at countless pieces of legislation, because we're certainly not the experts. We can identify generally the impact, but they help us get down to the weeds a little bit and tell us, what it is we need to look for, if it's worth advocating for or proposing. I do want to thank some key people that are noted here. Our financial services director, Jeff Kronk. Jeff looked at just countless fiscal notes. Those are notices that we receive from the Legislative Counsel Bureau that they ask us to indicate if there's a fiscal cost. In addition, there were tons of tax bills and bills that dealt with bonds. So Jeff stopped talking to me for a while. I think he's just talking to me now again. But I want to thank him for his support and his effort. Dan Marin, of course, is a true resource on public purchasing and procurement, not only for us, but for his peers throughout the state. Tom Garrison helped us, the fire chief helped us navigate some of the fire issues with auto aid and that. And, of course, I want to thank the city attorney's office and Cheryl Lighting for their support. There's a lot of bills that address legal matters, and Cheryl was in the building, testified both the Assembly and Senate for the charter bill. Of course, being a member of the League of Cities is very valuable in building those relationships and meeting with the League weekly with Wes, who brought in lunch for the group, and we shared intelligence and information. That was very, very helpful. And then the Sparks state delegation, our 2 senators, 3 assembly members, know who we are. We're in the building. They ask how Sparks is doing, what they can do for us. We may not always agree on every issue, but they're there for us when we need them. So that's a real quick overview of the acknowledgments, and appreciate continued support.
Ron Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, but a comment. I want to thank Adam and Rocky and your staff for the work you did in this session, because it looks like most of the legislation that has passed benefits Sparks in a good way. So I appreciate your efforts down there.
One thing I was going to say in the opening remarks is you're right. I mean, you can measure the success of a session based on how much you get taken away or how many unfunded mandates you get. And I think this session we truly did gain, and it was overall a very positive session. Thank you.
I think so too. I want to thank you. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Great, thanks. Julia, any questions, anything?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Great presentation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, next is presentation from the Executive Director of the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities on the 78th session of the Nevada Legislature and other league business. Mr. Wes Henderson. Welcome, Wes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Driscoll. It's a pleasure to be back in Sparks again. For the record, I am Wes Henderson, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities. First off, I'd like to thank you for your continued participation in and support of the League. And I also want to thank Mr. Adam Mayberry for all of his efforts during the past legislative session. He was a valuable asset to not only myself, but the other members of the League as well. We were able to, I guess I could just say ditto, because they did such a great job of going over the session, but I do want to highlight a couple of bills. Adam talked about Assembly Bill 19 regarding the timing of the hearing that you have to hold on your budget hearing. You now have basically a 2-week window. We're successful in getting Assembly Bill 25 passed, and this bill clarifies that improvements to existing parks and park facilities are authorized uses for revenue derived from the residential construction tax, as long as the improvements are attributable to the new construction from which the revenue is collected. We also managed to get past Senate Bill 22. This bill eliminates the need for certain businesses, such as wholesale beer, wine, and liquor distributors, brew pubs, craft distilleries, etc., that are located within the limits of an incorporated city. They no longer need to also get the approval of the county commission before the Department of Taxation will issue them the license that they need to operate. We had 2 bills that we couldn't get through this session. One was a bill that sought to clarify what government agencies could charge for providing copies of public records. And we also had a bill that would have established a state coordinating agency for the Main Street program of the National Main Street Center of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. we knew that bill was going to be an uphill battle because we were asking for an appropriations that was not in the governor's recommended budget. However, I truly believe in that program. We're not going to give up on that. We're going to work with the governor and various state agencies to try to get that included in his budget for the next biennium. And then we were able to get Assembly Bill 493, as Mr. Mayberry said, a functional home rule bill. The bill modifies Dillon's rule as it applies to matters of local concern. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your efforts on that bill. Your calls and letters certainly helped. And the bill states that reasonable questions as to whether an incorporated city has a power must be resolved in favor of the city unless there is legislative intent to the contrary. So that's really all I was going to cover on the session. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the session before I continue with a couple other little items.
Questions for Wes on the session? Okay, none. Okay, go ahead, Charlene.
On Assembly Bill 172, which the exempting prevailing wage from school construction, that's the school construction bill, correct? Well, now they said it's all public works now. But was that originally for school construction was going to be exempt, and it was passed both houses, signed by the governor, and then all of a sudden changed, I guess, added to another bill at the end?
At the last day.
Is that this bill, or is that another?
I don't remember if it was AB 172 or not. I think it was, but it did add back in that the school construction, but at a 90% rate of prevailing wage. So in other words, if prevailing wage is $100 an hour, then on a school project it would only be 90. But yeah, at first it was gone and then it was back. There was a lot of bills like that this session where pieces would come in and pieces would go out, and then they show up in a different bill. And there's a reason why they call legislation a lot like sausage making, because it really is.
Right, and I guess, that's something all of us who know that we need, our need for schools, especially as we look at the growth we're going to see in these next few years, the construction and the maintenance and but the cost to do that, and now our dollars won't go as far. And for them to get it passed early and the governor to sign it and then all of a sudden it disappears is pretty frustrating as both an elected official, but as a citizen and somebody who knows, the issues that we have with construction costs for schools. So just curious, it was something that you guys were watching and knew anything more, or just that's just what they can do down there? It's just change something by adding it to another bill and then it's gone.
And especially at the end of the session.
Okay.
That happens, trade-off for votes or whatever, but a lot of that kind of stuff happens at the end of the session as we're trying to get the bills out before midnight on the 120th day.
Yeah.
So you're watching all the bills up to midnight.
We were there till midnight, yes.
Session before last, we saw a hotel disappear in Sparks.
Yeah.
At midnight, yeah.
We supported the new running it now.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wes. Go ahead.
Okay. The League of Cities has entered into a state sponsorship agreement with the U.S. Communities Program. That is a nationwide government purchasing program. They go out and they negotiate contracts with nationwide suppliers. You can log on, become a member of that, and purchase through there and get some cost savings that way. And then it also benefits the League a little bit. And I'd like to talk briefly about our conference, which is coming up in October. It is in West Wendover, which I know has some challenges in actually getting there. We are looking at, there's a flight from Reno that actually changes planes in Las Vegas. So if we can get enough people from up here that want to fly there and get on that flight with the people from Las Vegas, we can arrange for bus transportation from Salt Lake City to West Wendover. And we're also looking at the possibility of maybe some van transportation as well. We are deep in the planning process for the conference. I think we're going to have some very dynamic speakers. We're going to have some educational sessions on some topics. I'd like to just go over those briefly. We're going to have educational sessions on adapting to drought conditions, getting along with businesses, how to participate in public lands management planning, keeping City Hall safe, the business of marijuana, and eliminating veterans' homelessness. And we also have, to me, the conference, the general sessions and the educational sessions are the meat and potatoes, but the social functions are equally as important because that gives you guys a chance to interact with your peers from across the state. And we've got some very, I think, going to be fun events planned. One I want to talk about, we're going to have a 1940-style USO show, complete with an 18-piece big band, which is going to be held at the service club at Wendover Air Base, which has just been refurbished. I don't know if you're aware or not, but Wendover Air Base is where the crew for the Enola Gay trained during World War II. So it's going to be I think we're working really hard to have a robust agenda and a good program for everybody, and we hope as many of you as possible can attend. And then, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to end with one piece of federal legislation that has just been introduced. It's H.R. 2775. This is called the Remote Transaction Parity Act. It is similar to the Marketplace Fairness Act that was in the last Congress, is to close the loophole on purchases made remotely, either online or other methods. As you know, if you buy something online that sales tax is not collected on, you are supposed to fill out a form, report to the Department of Taxation, and submit use taxes in an amount equal to the sales taxes. And no one does that. We're trying to close that loophole. And so I certainly encourage you to contact our congressional delegation and with your support of that bill. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Bybee?
Can you give me the bill number again for that?
It's H.R. 2775. It was introduced by Representative Chavitz of Utah, and Representative Amodei has signed on as a co-sponsor of the bill. The League has sent letters to all of our congressional delegation. Mr. Mayor, I believe you have as well, and we appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions for Wes? Okay. Wes, thanks for all you did during the session. Appreciate it. I know you did a lot of hard work. So.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to some fun stuff. Commendations for, if they would come up, please, to the front here. Commendations for Brandon Miles, Mark Reynolds, and David Breeze. I didn't see Mark. Is he really working or something? Or?
He's at a tournament. He's at a softball. His daughter's softball.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and have a seat. Let me read these real quick, and then we'll have you say a few comments. Whereas on May 21st, 2015, a bicyclist on the outskirts of Golden Eagle Regional Park suffered a potentially fatal injury due to a crash. And whereas an accompanying companion bicyclist went into the park to seek help, and assistance came upon 3 Sparks maintenance employees performing their duties. And whereas park maintenance employees Brandon Miles, Mark Reynolds, and David Breeze immediately responded to the site of the accident, administered first aid, and transported the injured bicyclist to a location easily accessible to paramedics and first responders. And whereas, as a testimony to the teamwork and quick action by Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Miles, and Mr. Breeze, the life of this bicyclist was saved. And whereas Sparks City Council and citizens of Sparks applaud these 3 men who came to the aid of an individual in need and responded professionally and with compassion. Now, therefore, I, Gino R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, join with the Council and commend Mark Reynolds for his continued service to the City of Sparks and for his vigilance and response during a dire situation. So there's 3 of them here. One is for Mark Reynolds, one obviously is for Mr. Breeze, and one obviously is for Mr. Miles. So thank you so much for what you've done. David? Don't leave. Say a few words, please. You go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks.
Did you write that down?
Yeah. Worked all night on it.
Okay, good. You've been contacted by lawyers yet? Yeah.
You got her back? All right.
We were just doing what anyone else would do, just trying to help people that needed our help. That's all.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. Thanks for making the Levy City look good, appreciate it. Okay, consent items, anybody want to pull a consent item 8.1 through 8.5? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull 8.2 for a staff presentation, please.
Okay. Anyone else not looking for a motion? Mr. Smith?
Move to approve consent items 8.1, 8.3 through 8.5.
Mr. Schmidt? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Schmidt to approve 8.1 and 8.3 through 8.5. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. 8.2, is there someone from staff here? I saw Tracy, but I don't know where she went. O'Brien? Can you give us a presentation? Consideration and possible acceptance of a $7,007.75 donation from Lux Dynamics of electrical light fixtures for park buildings within the city of Sparks. Go ahead, Brian.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council. I appreciate you taking this one out of order. Of course, for the record, my name is Brian Kaysen, Capital Projects Manager for the City of Sparks. I just wanted to say a few words for Lux Dynamics. They've been a very good company to work with, especially during the Alf Sorensen project, and they provided lights in the past, and they provided the lights that we replaced and did for this past the pool area project. They've stood behind their project, or stood behind their product, and have just gone above and beyond in everything they've done, and done their best to provide the best product possible for the city of Sparks. So I just wanted to thank John and Danielle McCarty right there for being so helpful. And they ended up, there were some old lights that we took out that basically got damaged during the removal process, and they volunteered to replace them and actually change them so that they would work on other buildings that we have. So just thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it, really. Okay, anybody want to make a motion? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve item 8.2 and heartfelt thanks to Lux for their donation.
Mr. Smith?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Smith to approve 8.2 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your gracious donation. We really appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to general business. Discussion and possible approval of the 2015-16 dues for the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities in the amount of $20,150.78. Mr. Mayberry.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon again, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Adams, Mr. Driscoll, Adam Mayberry for the record again. This is an item to approve the 2015-16 dues for the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities in the amount of $20,150.78.
Mr. Schmidt.
Mr. Mayor, Adam, this has nothing to do with the city of Sparks, but it has everything to do with the city of Sparks' involvement in the Nevada League of Cities. It's their financial thing. We've heard anything on Reno. There was talk, there was some editorials in the paper that Reno was pulling out of the Nevada League of Cities. Do we have an update on that? And if so, what kind of financial impact is that going to do to the league?
Well, the executive director of the league is in the audience, Wes Henderson. I'll invite him to come up if he can, and he can speak to the issue with the city of Reno and their dues.
I think they paid up with their $11 million windfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Smith, actually, I'm happy to report that the city of Reno was the first dues check I received this year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Smith? Go ahead.
Okay, I move to approve the 2015-16 dues for the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities in the amount of $20,150.78.
Ms. Bybee?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Ms. Bybee to approve 9.1 Nevada League of Cities dues. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Again, Wes, thank you so much, and good luck on another successful year. Okay, let's move on to 9.2, consideration and possible acceptance of the State of Nevada Attorney General's Victim of Crime Act grant in the amount of $46,369 to fund a victim advocate position. Mr. Allen, Chief Allen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Brian Allen, Chief of Police, for the record. We come before you today requesting funding or matching funds for a State of Nevada pass-through grant for the Victims of Crime Act. Historically, we have participated in this grant, and this year we were able to finally move Jennifer Olson's victim advocate position into the general fund. My intent and purpose was to give a year or so break before I came before the council and asked for funding. However, earlier this year, Attorney General Laxalt specifically requested that we participate with Washoe County and the City of Reno in a pilot program matching and using the victim advocate resources that are available to us to better coordinate between the victim advocates, as our victims of crime sometimes are very transient, like much of our population, and travel from city to city, and that we have a better collaborative effort. With this, we were able to find funding within the police department and the city grant match programs to fund this and add a second victim advocate. I can't explain enough how much our victim advocate brings to our city and our citizens, in the fact that she has assisted over 3,700 people in the 7.5 years that she's been with our organization. Just last year, we had over 1,000 domestic battery reports with over 1,500 domestic battery incidences, over 180 TPO or EPO type incidences, and those don't include, the stalking incidences and all of those. Our victim advocate also assists with major crimes, homicides, robberies, assault and battery with a deadly weapon. So as you can tell, she's a very busy young lady, and even when I met with her this morning, she was reviewing all the cases from this weekend to try to figure out how to and who to reach out to. This grant is going to be primarily focused with domestic violence related issues from a patrol and using our patrol division. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have on this grant.
Questions for Chief Allen? Okay, if not, looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee.
I move to approve and accept the State of Nevada Attorney General's Victim of Crime Act grant in the amount of $46,369 to fund a victim advocate position.
Mr. Schmidt. We have a motion by Ms. Bybee, seconded by Mr. Schmidt, to approve 9.2 for the victim advocate. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you for your support.
Appreciate it. Got the next one? 9.3 is consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a complement change to add one police sergeant and remove one police officer position. Go ahead, Chief.
Again, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Brian Allen, Chief of Police, for the record. What we have before you is a complement change request, not adding to or deleting from the total complement of the police department, but changing the complement by adding a sergeant and removing one police officer. During the recession years, we were unfortunate that we had to remove a lot of the administrative sergeant positions within our organization. These positions have typically been used to further educate and teach young supervisors the administrative side of a police department, where they are taught how to run a police department administratively, just not operationally from a patrol or detective setting. Through the recession, we utilized Officer Carl Nieberlein to manage all of our grants, because he was managing a lot of the traffic-related grants in his role as the traffic officer, and we were able to add on to his duties the rest of the grants that we had, including the COPS grants, the Victims of Crime grants that you just approved. He initially was going to retire next fiscal year, and I thought I had another year to do this, until he was offered a job by the state where he could utilize his capabilities down there, so he announced his retirement. I would like to change this position back into a sergeant position so that we can have a person of rank and a supervisor representing the Sparks Police Department at these grant proceedings and these different grant meetings, along with using this position for future succession planning to train young supervisors on the administrative side of the police department. This will not detract from any patrol resources, as the officer position that is being changed into a sergeant position was assigned out of the office of the chief, and it won't have a negative impact on patrol. And I will answer any questions that you have.
Questions for the chief, Ms. Bybee?
Chief, under your, the financial impact assumptions that you've listed
Yes.
here, I had two questions. Number 3 was the new sergeant will be hired at 10% above the base pay per sergeant. Is that because the job encompasses more than your other sergeants are doing?
Yes, anytime we have a supervisor in a special assignment, they receive 10% special assignment pay. The officer that is currently in that role is also receiving a 10% special assignment pay. It's there to design to compensate the employees from missing overtime and holidays and those other pays that they would receive if they remained in patrol as an incentive for them to take these other positions.
Okay. And then second question, number 4, the new sergeant would take family medical coverage. I was unclear on the wording on that. Will he be covered, family will be covered? Or?
Yeah, the benefits would not change. That's kind of a confusing language. Whoever would take that position would have whatever coverage, the insurance they had in their previous role.
So they take it with them into
if
that
they were
position.
a single person getting single insurance, they would have that. If they married with children, they would have the family plan. None of those things would change.
Okay, they would take whatever medical coverage they have with them into the position. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Chief, is it right to assume that the police officer being promoted is at the top of the range?
Typically speaking, most promotions come from top of a range police officers.
So if you gave him 10% above the base of a sergeant, would that even be a raise for him?
Yes, because a sergeant's range is usually typically 18 to 23% above top-of-range police officers. Many times, though, because of the overtime and all the things associated with, like coming out of detectives, officers sometimes do take pay cuts to become supervisors.
Okay, and that's what it looks like happening to me. I mean,
and at times it can happen, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Smith?
I move to approve the change to complement the police department, to add 1 police sergeant and to remove 1 police officer.
Mr. Schmidt? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Schmidt to approve 9.3 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
Thank you again for your support.
Next is 9.4, consideration and possible award of a contract for the 2016 Street Rehabilitation Unit Number 1, bid number 1516-001, PWP-WA 2015-182 to Sierra Nevada Construction in the amount of $1,080,007. Speed hump. Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. John Erickson, AKA Speed Hump, Transportation Manager for the city. The project or the contract that's before you today is for the Unit 1 FY16. This is over on the Howard Drive, bearing Sparks Boulevard and North McCarran Boulevard. We had 5 qualified bids. The low bid was the SNC, and we went as high as $1,142,710. We had very competitive bidding on this project. Staff is recommending that we award the contract to SNC.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Erickson, a.k.a. Speed Hump? Okay, looking for a motion. Ron Smith.
I move to award the 2016 Street Rehab Unit 1, bid number 1516-001, PWP-WA-2015-182. Did I miss any of those? No. Okay. To Sierra Nevada Construction, the amount of $1,080,007.
Ms. Bybee.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Ms. Bybee to approve 9.4 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. And one point of discussion here. I nicknamed Mr. Erickson Speed Hump because a long time ago when I first came to the council everybody and their mother wanted a speed hump to slow down traffic. And as we know, you can't have speed humps on every portion of every block. So I would send Mr. Erickson out to talk them down off the ledge, and he would successfully find them or let them know that they couldn't have a speed hump, and everybody was happy with that. So that's why I call it. That's why I call it a speed hump.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, 9.5, consideration of and possible approval of professional services contracts with Robert Bell and John L. Marshall to serve on an on-call basis as the city's administrative hearing officers.
Mayor Martini, members of City Council, Armando Ornelas, City Planner. As you may recall, earlier this year, the City Council amended Title II of the Sparks Municipal Code to provide code enforcement officers and other appropriate city officials the authority to issue and record notices of violation, issue civil citations and fines, and if a code violation is not corrected, potentially lien a property. The ordinance also established requirements for administrative enforcement and adjudication procedures and provides for an administrative hearing and appeal process. So if we're going to have administrative hearings, we need an administrative hearing officer. This agenda item asks the City Council to approve professional services contracts for Robert Bell, who's sitting to my left, and John Marshall, who is not here and would be primarily serving in the backup role, to serve as administrative hearing officers and conduct administrative hearings for appeals of code enforcement officials' actions. Both Mr. Bell and Mr. Marshall are attorneys experienced in public and private practice. Both are admitted to practice law by the Nevada State Bar. Mr. Bell currently serves as an administrative hearing officer in a similar capacity for the City of Reno, so he has experience doing this in a very similar context. The proposed contracts with Mr. Marshall and Mr. Bell would extend through June 30th, 2016, with the option to renew for up to 2 years, two additional 12-month periods. The contracts provide that they will be reimbursed for actual time at the hourly rate specified in the attachment to the agreement, which is essentially $125 an hour. The estimated cost for this first fiscal year, that is through June 30th of 2016, is approximately $19,320, and that was based essentially on them, holding hearings once a month. There is some front-end work we will do with Mr. Bell to stand up our hearing and appeals process, but I wanted to have Mr. Bell introduce himself to you, and you could ask him any questions that you may have.
Anything to say? Go ahead, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Robert Bell. I appreciate being chosen for this position. I'm a fifth generation Nevadan. I've been in private practice in Reno for over 30 years. I've served as a pro tem judge for the cities of Reno and Sparks, and also administrative hearing officer for the city of Reno. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm hoping I can take some of the load off of your hands, and as we have done in Reno, and conduct hearings on an administrative basis there, which I think will save the council time and hopefully the citizens of Sparks money as well. I strive to get consensus between the parties and often are able to work out problems and in those hearings, and I hope I'll be able to do that over here as well.
Good questions for Mr. Bell. Ms. Bybee.
Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
The final piece of this whole code enforcement and our enforcement, and just this finishes up, what came before me, but now it's good to have you in position. Question on Reno. How long have you been in this position for the city of Reno?
Oh, almost 20 years.
Okay. And what do they do once a month? I'm just curious,
Yes.
what kind of time frame we're looking per month that you have to work?
Typically, we set hearings for code violations, business license rejections, and that sort of thing twice per month. We also set special hearings for parking violations, which the city of Reno has decriminalized, and they can appeal those to my office as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
I move to approve the professional services contract with Robert Bell and John Marshall.
Do I have a second? Ms. Bybee.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilwoman Bybee to approve 9.5. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Bell, for being here.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Nice meeting you all.
9.6, consideration and possible approval of an agreement to cooperate to sell Washoe County Assessor's Parcel Number 514-081-01, an approximately 1.2 acre parcel of city-owned property in conjunction with Washoe County Assessor's Parcel Number 516-281-03, an approximately 3 acre parcel owned by David L. Hurt. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Ian Crittenden, senior planner. This is an item that has been before council a while back in a little bit different form. Previously, it had been an issue of trying to market a 1 acre parcel, roughly 1 acre parcel, with a roughly 3 acre parcel that Mr. Hurt owned, because they made more sense to sell as a unit. Do we have the item to show? This is just a little map to kind of help understand why these two pieces are so well suited to be sold together. There we go. So the piece highlighted, kind of the pink, is Mr. Hurt's property, and the blue piece is the piece owned by the city. This is directly east of Fire Station Number 4. Right now, Mr. Hurt access is actually across an access easement that is on our property already. So what we've done is we took the agreement that we had previously had in place that had expired well over a year ago at this point, and rewrote it to allow Mr. Hurt has now got a potential buyer that's trying to work out some of his due diligence, and this agreement now is to basically to agree that ourselves and Mr. Hurt won't sell the properties separately until he has a chance to go through his due diligence and try to get the entitlements that he needs in order to develop the property that he wants to. So that's the cooperative sale agreement you guys, the members of council, have in front of you to potentially approve today.
Okay, questions, Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When this came before us before, there were some concerns about it, and we didn't actively market this. The city's never actively marketed our 1 acre. It's always been allowing Mr. Hurd to do the marketing on it. And my concern back then, and is concern today that I've expressed to staff with it, is that our 1 acre, in terms of buildability, is much better than his 3 acres combined buildability. And so if we're doing appraisals on this, we should be appraising our product for what the potential use of it is. And I've already spoken to Armando and staff that if we can't appraise this thing at multifamily units, then we need to go back and have a zoning change done ourselves to do this, because it's right now it's public use space, which is not that much. It's a nice flat piece of property. All the expense of the building is going to be on the back 3 acres on over there. The project doesn't happen without our 1 acres. It just doesn't happen. It's just not possible. So there's some real value here, and for the city to not trying to make that piece of property as valuable as possible, I think is not using taxpayers' resources very wisely. I think staff needs to address this, address the lot line adjustment right away, so we can go ahead and square that off and make that into a decent piece of property, and get the zone change and the master plan done to make it what the property is going to be used for, and then have the property appraised, because I don't want to see something come back here with appraisal that's same cost per square foot as that 3 acres is, because it's two different products, 2 different animals.
That is the approach that we'd written into that sale agreement, was that it should be appraised at the intended use value. So we're thinking along the same lines that you are. Obviously, we've got to get a little bit further down the road before we can find out if they'll do that, but that is the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bybee.
Question. So we don't have an appraisal yet. That's going.
No, we don't.
So the $3,000 cost. That's what the staff time in the appraisal.
Appraisal costs. Yes.
Okay, and then obviously we'll have the proceeds from the.
Correct.
That's going to offset whatever costs us to get the appraisals and for your work.
It should more than offset it, yes.
In theory.
Yeah. Well,
Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any more questions. Looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee.
I move to approve the agreement to cooperate in the sale of city-owned property with David Hurt.
Mr. Smith.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Bybee, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve 9.6. Any further discussion?
Just one.
Whoop, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I think Mr. Schmidt was talking about starting the process now to rezone that, as opposed to waiting for the buyer to want to do it. So, because if he doesn't work out, at least we'll have it rezoned.
That's definitely something we could pursue. The thought process we've had in-house to this point was that the burden of going through these entitlement processes ought to be on the buyer, and that's the way we've kind of built all this stuff. If we get to a position when we start to look at my mind just went blank. Find appraisals. And we find out, they won't appraise it, different than the property's currently zoned, which I don't think that'll be the case. Then we'd have to reassess and maybe try to change the order of operations on how we move forward.
Well, I would guess the first process would be to contact an appraiser and see if they can appraise it at the new zoning. And if he can't, then we start the process.
Yeah.
Okay,
then we'll
thank
change
you.
it.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Smith. And my point is that if this thing falls through the cracks again, it's evident that we want to sell this piece of land, and the city has no plans in the future to ever doing it. We shouldn't be land banking it. We should start preparing ourselves to sell it ourselves.
Okay.
If that's what this, if it falls out of, this buyer doesn't come through, we should prepare the property to go ahead and sell it, since we've already admitted we don't need it, and we need to sell it. Let's sell it for the highest and best use. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no further discussion, please vote.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it. Okay, 9.7, consideration and possible approval of a settlement and severance package between the City of Sparks and Ginny Sievert regarding disputed litigation. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Doug Thornley, Assistant City
Very
Attorney.
nattily dressed, Doug Thornley, I might add.
Well, thank you. Ginny Sievert has been a firefighter for the City of Sparks for the past 21 years. The last 5 or 6 years, the relationship between Ms. Sievert and the city have...
Hey, Gino?
Yes.
I'm having a hard time hearing Doug. Can we ask him to get a little closer to the microphone?
He's doing that as we speak.
I can try.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Over the last 5 or 6 years, the relationship has steadily degraded, with Captain Sievert alleging various forms of discrimination in violation of federal law. In response, the city has undertaken 2 investigations where we utilized outside law firms to investigate the claims. Both times, the claims were determined to be unfounded. Captain Sievert sued the city in 2012, alleging various violations of Title VII, both the discrimination claims that I mentioned earlier and retaliation, a new retaliation claim for essentially raising the claim in the first instance. The United States District Court for the District of Nevada granted the city's motions for summary judgment with respect to both those claims, and Captain Sievert has appealed the matter to the Ninth Circuit. As part of the appeal, the Ninth Circuit assigned this case to the court-sanctioned mediation program, where the court essentially urges the parties to work it out. As part of that process, on behalf of the city, I discussed the matter with Captain Sievert's lawyer. It is my view that the relationship between the parties is, in all likelihood, damaged beyond repair. I think that we find ourselves in a position that we could very easily wind up in just a never-ending cycle of litigation that brings with it attendant costs, both monetary and in terms of opportunity, with respect to managing the fire department on a day-to-day basis. So it's my recommendation today that we sever the employment relationship with Captain Sievert pursuant to the terms of the settlement agreement now before the council. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? No questions? Looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based upon the advice provided by the city attorneys, I move to approve the settlement of the litigation brought by Mr. Frank Gilmore Esquire on behalf of his client for up to $194,074.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Ms. Bybee, to approve Agenda Item 9.7, settlement with employee Jenny Sievert. Any further discussion, questions? Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, this is not a good situation, and I struggle with this mightily. I just can't support the motion.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, it's unfortunate, and I think the city of Sparks is putting them in a very bad situation today, because this just tells all the other 600 employees we have, you want to go ahead and retire early and have the city pay additional money to have you retire early, just start causing problems. And go ahead and start suing the city. Go ahead and start putting all this stuff on up, and the city will spend the resources. Go ahead and do it, and in the end, we can go ahead and buy you out, and you can go retire. And I think that's a bad statement to be sending to 600 other employees.
Ms. Bybee.
This is a tough one from the financial side of things, but also on the financial side of things, more litigation costs the city more money. The situation, as it was presented, is not a good situation for anybody. It's not good for Captain Sievert. It's not good for the rest of the fire department. And the potential financial cost to the city, even though I don't like making this payment, the potential cost as a business decision, I think it's the right business decision, but I also think it's the right decision based on for her and for the city and for the well-being of operating our fire department. So I am going to be in support of this.
Okay, for me, I don't vote, but I support this wholeheartedly. There comes a time in some issues that you just got to cut your losses and move on with life. Doesn't send a great message. I understand that, but I don't want to see us throw good money after bad or bad money after good, whatever you want to call it. This is going to go on and on and on and on. I just think we need to look at this not short-sightedly but far-sighted for what's going to happen in the future, and cut our losses and move on with life and get over it. You're right, Charlene, tough pill to swallow. I'm glad and happy I don't have to vote on this, but if I did, I would vote for it. I just think it needs to be happen for the sake of the fire department. It's what's been going on over there is horrible. It's not a good situation, and we need to move on. Julia, you have anything to say?
Just putting some faith in the process of mediation, and that through a process of mediation, both parties come to a place where their needs are met. And again, it's not a great situation for the city. It's not a great situation for Captain Sievert. And I'm putting my faith in the mediation process that both parties will get their needs met, and that I hope we take this as an opportunity to reflect as a city that we always dig in deeper and make sure that we are doing the very best that we can. And I'm not saying that we didn't. I'm just saying that anytime you have a situation like this, taking an opportunity to reflect and make sure that we are striving to have the absolute best practices when it comes to diversity in the workforce is an important thing for us to do.
Thanks, Julie. There's no doubt that there was mistakes made on both sides of this issue. No doubt there's plenty of finger pointing to go on for both sides. But any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Okay, passes 3-2 with Mr. Lawson and Mr. Schmidt obviously in opposition. Ms. Ratty, Ms. Bybee and Mr. Smith is a yay. Okay, passes 3-2. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move into public hearing and action items unrelated to planning and zoning. Public hearing and possible approval of resolution number 3285 for the sale of the redevelopment agency to the city of Sparks, 8 parcels totaling approximately 4.83 acres. Mr. Ornelas.
Mayor Martini, members of the City Council, I am Armando Ornelas, City Planner. This is essentially the development agreement with Silverwing Development for their purchase and redevelopment of up to 8 parcels from the redevelopment agency. I'm going to need to ask, as advised by the City Attorney's Office and with the concurrence of the City Manager, that you open the public hearing because it's been noticed, but that you continue the item until July 27th. And the reason for that is that I made an error in one digit for one of the 8 parcel numbers, and given that this is about the sale of those 8 parcels, that error is material. I have conferred with Mr. Witt, and I think we're okay. He won't be able to attend the meeting on the 27th, but he will have representation here.
Okay, we'll have no presentation, but we will have to have a public hearing since it's been noticed, from what I understand. So I'm going to open the public hearing right now. Anyone in the audience want to speak to this particular item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for action. Armando, you want this continued to the next meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
We will.
All right. Okay, any discussion or looking for a motion? Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's actually Julia's ward. I was going to make a motion for this is Julia's ward or redevelopment. I'm sorry. I'll make a motion to go ahead and continue this for the next meeting.
Mr. Smith?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Smith to move agenda item 10.1 to our next meeting on 7/27. Okay. Any further?
Parts of the item, correct.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thanks, Armando. 11.1 is PCN 14039, consideration of and possible action on a request for abandonment of the Kylie Ranch Northeast Golf Community Plan Development approved by the City Council on October 13, 2003, for a site of approximately 279 acres in size in the NUD, New Urban Development Zoning District, located north of Spanish Springs Diversion Dam. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Martini and Council. I'm Karen Malvey, Senior Planner. Before you today is a request to abandon the Kylie Northeast Golf Community Plan Development Handbook. The map up there, the outlined area that's crosshatched is the boundaries of the Plan Development Handbook. This is, I'm sorry, I'm used to the DocuCam. This is Vista here, just to give you a reference. And this would be Pyramid Highway over here on the far west. This handbook was approved by City Council on October 13, 2003. The intent of the handbook was to develop approximately 279 acres of land into 338 residential units and a municipal golf course and open space. The central feature of the plan development was going to be the golf course. After approval of the handbook, the City of Sparks decided that they would not go forward and develop the golf course. As a result, there has been no development on this 279 acres, nor have been any improvements. The parcels all still remain vacant. The open space, which is the wetlands, is owned by the Kylie Ranch Preserve and Seek Foundation. This is a map that we prepared showing you the different ownership of the parcels. The parcels in the middle there are owned by the Conservancy. The 2 parcels on the far west are owned by Rising Tides, and then 3 parcels that are on the east side of Vista Boulevard are owned by the Golden Eagle LLC. All 3 property owners have come together in requesting that this handbook be abandoned. And because of the property has never been developed and does not look like it will ever be developed because of the golf course going away. The western properties, as I said, are owned by Rising Tides, and they are planned to be incorporated into the Kiley Ranch North Plan Development Handbook. The wetlands area, which is north of the Spanish Springs Diversion Dam and west of Vista Boulevard, are, as I stated, owned by the Kiley Ranch Conservancy Foundation and will remain as wetlands and open space. The 3 parcels owned by the Golden Triangle LLC are anticipated to be developed as a mixed residential and commercial land uses. Staff and Planning Commission support the abandonment of this handbook. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Malby? Mr. Schmidt?
All 3 property owners agreed upon doing this, right? There's no dissension out there at all by anybody?
No, they all signed an owner's affidavit
Thank you.
and also gave us a written request to abandon this handbook.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, is there anyone from any of the applicants that are here or anything want to speak? I guess not. Yes, come on. No, there she is. I should have known. Please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. My name is Lois Brown. I'm a project coordinator for Rising Tide and KM2 Development. Nothing happened on this project. It was approved way before our time, and I think what's really driving it is that there's no appetite from anyone for a golf course. The 2 parcels on the west side have been incorporated by master plan amendment into the Kiley Ranch North project, and so under our ownership, that will be folded into the larger project. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Plus, I can't believe there's no appetite for a golf course. None?
No appetite for anyone to pay for a golf course.
I see. Okay, Lois, thank you. Any questions for Lois?
If you have somebody, I've got the perfect answer.
Exactly.
Who'd like to pay for it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And maintain it.
Yeah. Lois, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Anyone else under public comment? Okay, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for action. Questions, Mr. Schmidt, or motions? Mr. Schmidt?
I'm ready to make a motion if
Go for it.
there are questions from the council. I move to approve the abandonment request of Kiley Northeast Golf Communities Plan Development associated with PCN 14039 based on the facts as set out in the staff report.
Mr. Smith?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve 10.2. Any further discussion? Or 11.1, excuse me. Any other questions? Seeing none, please vote.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Julia, thanks. Do you have any comments under comments from the public, or comments from the city council?
I do not. Thanks for accommodating me.
Okay, we'll see you later. Thanks for joining in. We appreciate it. Comments? Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to have a closed door, so we'll once we go ahead and adjourn, we'll adjourn to closed door. There's no need for us to come back. Okay. All right. So, comments from the public? Anyone under the public want to speak? Comments from the city council or city manager? Ms. Pivey?
I just wanted to make a public comment to thank our city staff, Public Works, Ron, and all the amazing staff who responded to our ongoing flash flooding in the last couple weeks. The work that your crews did was amazing. To see the amount of water coming through town and how fast things were cleaned up was really a test of all of our resources, but of a very efficient network of guys who are really working hard. And I just want to express my thanks to all the city workers, everyone who was out there cleaning up our mess. And I did ask the mayor if we were getting ready to build an ark at one point, but thank you, and please pass that on to your staff.
Anyone else? Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn to closed door. Mr. Smith?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Ms. Bybee?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Ms. Bybee to move to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We're out.